Welcome to Saturday Simulcast. Got to look at the calendar, but it's April 26th edition, and Tom Dienhart and Brian Neubert will join me, Alan Karpick. The GoldandBlack.com staff will hit a number of things today, mainly recruiting portal talk and football, little basketball recruiting talk in addition with Brian Neubert on the back end. I want to take a second, too. The very difficult day for Purdue yesterday. The Boilermakers special was involved with in an accident, which many of you may have read about already, and a fatality, and a very our thoughts go out to all those involved. And I know that the Reamer Club, that's a big part of what they do, and a big part of Purdue University, of course, Purdue's official mascot. So some sad news coming out of Purdue. We want to thank also here the Union Club Hotel for sponsoring Saturday Simulcast, and of course the Boiler House Prime Restaurant, the new restaurant at the Pete Dye Clubhouse, as they are opening about their third week there. Beautiful new restaurant. So I'm going to bring on my partner here, Tom Dienhart. We'll talk a little bit of portal talk at Purdue now. The count is at 12, at least as of this recording on Friday. Of course, that number could change. But the portal closes tonight. Just to kind of an overview, what updates do you have on that? I know you've been hitting this hard on the site, and you said very clearly early in the week that there was more to come, and that still, I'm sure, is your anticipation.
You're not jumping in the portal, are you, Alan Karpick?
No, I don't. I don't think anybody would want me. It'd be the game of musical chairs that I would be left out. So yeah.
Yeah, you're right. The count is 12 right now. I know it probably feels like people's heads are spinning. Who's coming, who's going, right? But 12 players, have committed to Purdue. I think most of them are almost signed, I think, Alan. People are probably seeing that on social media. The university tweets it out when these portal guys actually sign their agreement. Anyway, yeah, 12. And, like I said, Alan, this number could double by the time we get to kickoff on August 30th. 25, 26 guys, I think, in the April portal window could be added. And, of course, Alan Karpick, this is after Purdue brought in 29 players from the portal in December. So do the math. I'm not good at math. Even though I went to West Side, I pulled the GPA down, but almost 60 players by the time we get to the start of the season, almost 60 players on this 105-man roster could be brand new from the portal. Isn't that incredible?
It is incredible. And yeah, if you got, and then yet this is what Barry Odom has done. We've talked about that, certainly at UNLV the last couple of years, that number, he seems to be comfortable with it. But it is an amazing state of flux. And, there's all kinds of, we got a lot to talk about with respect to Ryan Browne coming back, which we talked about last week, and what Purdue's focus has been, that part of it. And another commitment on Thursday from an Alabama tight end. So that brings that number to 6, is it? Or 6 or 7 in the class of 2026. I mean, that all is it. And one thing to be clear, and I think you can expound on this, but because the portal closes today, April 25th, and of course this is the April 26th show, does not mean that like you said, that doesn't end it. It ends that they can jump in, but they can come anytime, right? I mean, that's basically the understanding.
Yeah, it's sort of like an airplane. Use the airplane analogy. The airplane's sitting on the ground on the tarmac right now. The portal airplane, it's going to take off at midnight, the 25th. Yeah, you got to get on that plane, Alan.
Yeah.
Get off later. So once that plane takes off, nobody else can get on, but you can get off at any time. But there's the exception, the graduate transfers, Alan.
Yeah.
If you already have your degree, you can move in and out of portal windows. But by and large, most of these guys moving aren't grad transfers. So yeah, that's the looming deadline. But again, these players are going to drib and drab out of the portal here for the next few weeks. So be mindful of that. They've had several players on campus late this week. I know that. I think we've gone 2 days now, Alan. 2 whole days without a portal commitment. I don't know what to do with myself. I'm doing push. and waiting nervously with bated breath to see who's next. But so yeah, 2 days. I expect maybe we'll get somebody here. I'm sure we're going to get somebody over the weekend. So stay tuned there. We've chronicled what we know. I think I got a pretty good grasp on the guys that have been here, but this stuff is very fluid, Alan. Visits get canceled at the last minute. Plans get changed. Guys commit before they even get here to other schools. And it's a case of the fast and the furious. So again, keep that chin strap buckled, as old Ernie Beck used to tell me. Keep your chin strap buckled and your mouthpiece in, because we're far from all this portal action being over.
Yeah, as I said, 12 portal editions more to come. And the Purdue's academic calendar, which can have some, I would guess, has some, just because class is still in session. Next week is dead week, and then finals after that. So I don't know if that really doesn't have a whole lot of impact on when kids visit anymore, I'm sure.
Yeah, you never even hear about academics. Man, remember when people used to wring hands about guys being eligible? You never hear a whiff of anybody having any trouble ever getting into school anymore, about anybody ever having an academic maybe flunking out. The last guy was the wide receiver from Louisville who flunked out. I'm drawing a blank on his name.
Number 0
Yeah,
in your heart, not
picture him. You guys know what I'm talking about. So again, yeah, you think there still is an academic component here, right? So yes, classes do have to transfer. You still have to enroll and still have to meet academic requirements. But it seems like that's never a hiccup in the process, is it?
No, it is.
Milton Wright.
Good, because I was Googling. If you looking to the left, I was Googling, because we're not seniors. Well, I am. You're not. And we don't forget things, but we do forget things sometimes. And sometimes I have the worst case of not being able to tell the forest for the trees. Milton Wright was really good. That game at Wrigley Field, still one of my favorite pictures of you and me on the field at Wrigley Field. And with my eyes closed, unfortunately, I emailed Chad Crockover, our photographer, and said, "Hey, Chad, did you click any other ones? Because Tom looks good, but my eyes are closed. But it's my favorite picture." But Milton Wright had a phenomenal day at Wrigley Field that day against Northwestern. From that stand, but we're digressing all over the place. But it is an important thing to note that again, the portal closed on Friday, but it will there'll be a lot more to come. The makeup of the class, I think it was 4 offensive linemen were in the count, 3 wide receivers, a key one. Also this week, talk about that. A couple transfers from Georgia that. Again, Purdue's been down that road before, but they need different. The Boilermakers and Barry Odom, and you've chronicled this a great deal. They need difference makers, alpha dogs, as you called them, at that wide receiver room, and maybe they got a couple of those this week.
Yeah, that's the hope for sure, Alan. And I know you and some other viewers of this may have some Georgia Bulldog, PT syndrome, but this is now up to 6 former Bulldogs the last 2 years that have matriculated to Purdue. Of course, last year they had C.J. Smith, Nyland Morissette, 2 receivers. So 2 years in a row they've taken 2 Georgia receivers. Of course, Nyland Green, the cornerback, and C.J. Madden. 4 Bulldogs and 2 more this year, Alan. You referenced Nitro Tuggle and Michael Jackson. You're exactly right. They need an alpha receiver on this wideout core. They brought in, I think they brought in 5 receivers in the December portal window. I think Charles Ross and Chauncey Magwood, USC and UCF respectively, on those schools. I think those are the 2 best December portal receivers they got. I think they like those 2 guys. Magwood got hurt, missed the last part of spring ball. But there was not really an alpha wideout among the players that were here in March and April, Alan. And the hope is Nitro Tuggle. What a name, Nitro Tuggle.
Nitro, I love it.
This lends itself to some NIL opportunities, you would think. Nitro Tuggle, a former 4-star recruit from the northern part of the state here, Northwood High School, Napanee, Indiana. He's from Goshen, Indiana. The guy went to Georgia out of high school, so there you go. That tells you all you need to know. He's not a real big guy, Alan, but he's a playmaker. So he's going to get every opportunity to be that alpha dog, that number 1 guy, that deep threat who can take the top off of defense. Michael Jackson, Another four-star recruit. He's an older guy. He's got 1 year of eligibility. Nitro's got 3, Alan.
Right.
Jackson's got 1, a former four-star recruit from Vegas. Spent, the first part of his career at USC. Last year at Georgia. Didn't really do anything in Athens last year. He's one of those guys that's never really fulfilled his expectations. I think he probably fits in as a depth guy. Then they brought in a kid from Tulsa named Corey Smith, who's from Brownsburg, Indiana. I'm told Corey really wanted to come to Purdue out of high school. Didn't work out, went to Tulsa. Now he's getting to come to Purdue, Alan. I think he's pretty excited about it. So I think he's probably more of a complimentary guy as well. So Nitro Tuggle's the name to know, Alan. I'll be honest with you. There's probably 4 guys of the 12 right now that are really look like they're cuts above to me. I go back to the linebacker. They got their very first guy, Sanders Ellis from Tennessee State. He looks special. I think the guard they got from Auburn, Braden Joyner, I think he's special. I think he's going to start at guard right away. Talked about Tuttle. And then, of course, quarterback, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Ryan Browne, I know he's still sort of a work in progress. He's only started 2 games in his career, but I think there's some reason to be excited about having old Ryan Browne back in the greater Lafayette area.
Interesting story on Ryan Browne. Obviously, went to North Carolina, entered the portal and transferred to Carolina. Went through spring practice. Now back at Purdue. I don't know. Maybe more to say on the. Was it a tryout? I don't know. There's all kinds of rumors and discussion about how much money he got to go there, but now he's back.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, and do you sense that's their A-list quarterback that they're going to get? Do you think there's anybody else, at least in your field, that they may try to bring in, or is it Ryan going to be the guy in your view?
I think he's the guy, Alan. All chips are in on Ryan Browne. And, I talked to Ryan on Saturday. He was down at the Indianapolis airport getting ready to go back to Chapel Hill. And you guys saw the story I posted with him. And, he says it's still going to be a competition. He's got to say that, right? And I think he's still the guy to beat. I think it's his job to lose. Nobody's going to say that at the Kozak football complex. They're going to say it's an open competition. And it is going to be a competition. I still think Ryan Browne's obviously the guy to beat, right?
Yeah.
Malachi Singleton, I think, is probably your number 2 guy. And then you've got Stub Bennett Meredith, and then you've got, Evans Chuba. And we've seen one quarterback leave already, Alan. E.J. Colson from Central Florida transferred shortly before Ryan Browne made his return official. I don't think any of these other guys are going to leave, Alan. I thought maybe a second guy would leave, but so far they're all sticking to their guns. They're going to remain in West Lafayette and battle for the job. So they have some decent depth there. So again, I think it's going to be Ryan Browne and probably Malachi Singleton. We saw what Ryan Browne can be, Alan, last October in Champaign, Illinois, in that 50-49 overtime Purdue loss. One of the best game of the year for Purdue, right? Yeah. Even though it was a loss. Ryan Browne passed for 297 yards. He ran for over 100. I think he had 3 touchdown passes. That can be Ryan Browne right there. He's a 6'4" guy, 215. He's quick. Again, size. I think he's still a developing passer. And I think he's got the intangibles, too, that can rally his teammates. So, Ryan Browne or bust in 2025, Alan.
Yeah, and again, you know darn well that and obviously the quarterback in Barry Odom's offense is going to do some different things than he did in Ryan Walter's offense, but it's the great, it's that position, biggest position in sports in terms of a guy that's going to impact every play just about in some way. And you have to think, and, Ryan Browne's legs, he showed that certainly against Illinois. He showed that even in his game against his didn't start the game against Northwestern in 2023, but he did show he was mobile. You have to think that's what's going to be a big part of this offense, especially when you have 2 running backs in Maccabee and some other options that back there that can get you to move the football.
Yeah, you're right. Ryan's got 3 years of eligibility too, Alan. He was only a redshirt freshman last year. He's an old redshirt freshman. I think he may be 21 years old. So he could conceivably be around here for a while. And you're right. You're only as good as the people around you as well. And I know the quarterback needs to elevate everybody. Special quarterbacks have that ability. but you certainly need complementary talent. And you talked about the running back room. I think that's a solid room. It's not a great room. It's a solid room. I don't expect any portal guys to be brought in the running back room. We talked about the receiving core. They have to get their tight end, George Burhan, healthy. And Barry Odom said he expected them to be ready to go by game 1. It was a pretty severe injury I think he suffered. I think it was his right ankle. He's had surgery on that ankle, Alan. And the offensive line, right? You're only as good as the big guys up front. I don't care how fast you run your 40 or how far you throw a football. If you can't get protected, you're of no value or your value is diminished. And we talked about that off the top here today about the offensive line. That's the one position. We talked about the 4 additions already. I think we could see maybe a couple more, Alan. Obviously, help was needed up front. They're getting that help, and from my observations, it looks like that they brought in some very nice offensive linemen, Alan. Some very big offensive linemen too, a lot bigger than you or I. I'm just glad they don't beat them down to triple X.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to have to, all good football teams, as we know, start with offensive line play, defensive line play. That's going to be a focus. It's really going to be, it is as much through all this mishmash and all the numbers. It is going to be fascinating come game 1 against Ball State that just what you're going to see and how they're going to put it together, how they can orchestrate this group to make it work from that standpoint. I was asking, you write, have written, and you'll be writing previews, and how in the heck do you predict who are the best teams in the Big Ten are? We know who some of the top teams are, but with all this transition, it is just so difficult to say. Purdue will probably be picked 16th, 17th, 18th, probably 18th, I'm going to guess, but who knows? And not whether that matters or not, it doesn't matter. But it's a fascinating, all these preseason magazines anymore. I mean, it's a tough thing to even put it on paper. About what you're going to see in a lot of these teams because of the state of flux.
Yeah, no, obviously nobody knows. I think that the teams that have the less, tumult, the less roster tumult, if you will, the more, certainty at positions are the ones that we can all have a greater grasp of, maybe thinking we know what they're going to be like. And those teams in the Big Ten, could be Penn State. It seems like we say Penn State every year, at least recently. This year for Penn State, right? This year.
Yeah.
They got Drew Allar, those running backs are back. No, they lost Abdul Carter, who's a high pick on Thursday night, but they think, Franklin could have maybe his best team yet. They got to get over that Ohio State hump. They can never beat the Buckeyes. And, Ohio State's going to be there too, Alan. I know they're going to have a quarterback change as well, but they have maybe the best player in the country, Jeremiah Smith, that wide receiver. And Oregon, the Oregon Ducks, I know they got a quarterback change. So the same names, same stuff, different year. How about that, Alan? It was the same stuff, different year. And, you're going to see Indiana and Illinois ranked in everybody's preseason top 25s. Some people think Illinois could be a top 10 team in the preseason, Alan. So, again, keep your eye on those two teams. Of course, Purdue rivals, right? They got to beat the Illini. You got to beat the Hoosiers. And I don't want to talk Indiana football here any longer than I have to, but they're not going away, Alan. So that's going to be a measuring stick too. So got to go to Minnesota. Got to go to Minnesota this year. That's going to be tough. And of course, November 15th, Alan Karpick. November 15th. You better pre-order your party platter for the Karpick Big Bash that Saturday when the Purdue Boilermakers play at the Washington Huskies versus former Boiler coach Ryan Walters.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. You'll have a good. I've never been to Seattle, and we'll wish you bon voyage for that one. That will be an interesting one. UCLA, obviously, a much ballyhooed situation too with its quarterback.
Yeah,
I never can pronounce his name, but Nico Amaliva, of course, the Tennessee quarterback. So much written about that, and he ends up at UCLA, right? So
change, and then what's USC going to be like? A lot of people think Lincoln Riley's on a hot seat out there, and this will be, I think, year 4 or 5, and it just hasn't developed for Lincoln Riley out there in USC. So there's a sense of urgency there, and Yeah, in Michigan, they've got their $1 million quarterback, Bryce Underwood. I think they're paying him
Yeah.
$5 million or some crazy number like that. It's going to be fun seeing how good he is. I think the people in Madison, Wisconsin are very, very anxious and worried about the direction of their program under Luke Fickell. What's going to happen there? That just has not been a real good marriage. There never was a honeymoon there. It ended very quickly. Iowa's Iowa, right? Iowa's always. Iowa actually has a quarterback this year, and they got a kid out of the portal they paid a ton of money to, that they're very excited about. A quarterback play is never usually a really ballyhooed thing in Iowa City. So when you have 18 teams down, there's no shortage of storylines, right? And a couple of weeks ago, we saw, speaking of that, the Big Ten announced its media days going to be in Las Vegas. I think Purdue's day is July 24th, if you can believe it. So that'll be here before we know it too. And so there's always something going on. And in June, Purdue's going to have 3 football camps. June's a month where you usually see a lot of these high school kids commit. You talked earlier about Purdue having 6 commitments so far in the class of 26. They got the big tight end, 6'6" kid from Alabama committed yesterday. I talked to him real quick. Got some quotes in that story. Seems like a good young man. So yeah, it may be a little slow, but man, you get into June, July, and then we're into August, Alan, and you're starting to paint the field over Ross-Ade Stadium by then.
I was going to ask it off the cuff. What's the connection in Alabama? I mean, Purdue's had a couple of things. Anything from assistant coach standpoint? I mean, I'm curious.
I need to find out what coach has that has connections down there. As far as those deep South connections. So, you turn over every rock you can. I was told that his recruitment had been blowing up. Ole Miss wanted him. He had some other nice offers. He was a wide receiver early on in high school. He played tight end for the first time last year. Still plays a little bit of receiver, he told me. Again, 6'6", 220. Why not? I mean, he could be an interesting tight end. Not a real physical inline blocker, but man, a target like that who's fleet of foot, guy you could split out, could be a very interesting guy in a couple of years. That's the key, Alan, is you get these high school kids, you wonder, are they going to stay?
Yeah.
Who knows? You got one freshman. Who knows? We've seen it all in the portal. We saw Jaden Ball leave this last week, which was a disappointment. You just don't know if these guys are even going to be around after 2 or 3 years. If they get antsy, want to try to play somewhere else. So I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but that's something I'm always kind of mindful of.
Yeah, no question. It's going to be a storyline that is going to be a consistent storyline as we continue to develop it through the year. All right, Tom, thanks so much for all your coverage and all your work. May it be a quiet weekend, though I'm not sure it will be. It will be from that standpoint. But
something to do, Alan. I need something to do. I can't just exercise and eat my bowl of Fruit Loops every day. I got something to do, right?
Well, I'm going to guess there's going to be something, like you said, that'll come down the pike. All right. Well, we'll look forward to your coverage, and it'll be a continued storyline throughout the course of this year. All right. We're not really taking a short break, but the next person you'll see will be Brian Neubert. We'll talk a little Purdue basketball as well. He's also in the middle of watching some high school recruits, and the roster is set for Purdue men's basketball. That portal closed on the 23rd, so all is well in West Lafayette. So again, thanks, Tom, and we'll see you next week on Saturday Simulcast. Again, we'll be back with Brian Neubert here in a moment. Alan Karpick joined by Brian Neubert, and we'll talk some Purdue basketball and beyond, so to speak, here on today's April 26th edition of Saturday Simulcast, GoldandBlack.com Saturday Simulcast. A reminder, too, that you can subscribe to GoldandBlack.com. We have always have a special running for a month for $1, and if you want to participate and see what read what everybody's talking about on Knucklehead Central, please consider that. All right, Brian, this is your time of year where you're hitting the road. You're hitting the road all times of year, but we'll start with tonight, or Friday night, I should say, and that is heading down to Lebanon and what you're going to see there. But then we want to get into also the class of 2026. But what's up with your visit in Lebanon?
Nothing really newsworthy. I just want to see Noah Smith a couple times, the forward from Plainfield, who I think, is a guy in Indiana who, sometimes there's always a guy every year in the state where you just kind of wake up one day and he has turned into something entirely different. And I thought last year Noah Smith was that guy. He's kind of a sweet shooting 6'8" forward who has a lot of physical upside to him. So I just kind of want to see where he is right now to see whether he's a guy that, Purdue might wind up being very involved with. He's started to get some offers from what I understand. And I've just always thought he's a guy Purdue ought to really keep an eye on. But I want to see it for myself. That's the whole point of what we do in the summers, is seeing it for ourselves and not necessarily taking other people's word for it. So it's more a personal curiosity social call on Friday night than anything. So not that big a deal.
Yeah, but when you look at the class of 2026, and you obviously Trey Thompson, a 6'8" power forward from Greenville, Tennessee, high on Purdue's list, and vice versa. It seems like Luke Ertl already committed. Just some. You had a chance to see those guys and what you see out of them, and the interesting with Ertl, and now. And maybe have nothing to do with it. So you can explain that with Omer Mayer joining the fray. Does that make any difference for Ertl? How do you view that? And also what you're seeing out of Thompson, because you still think Purdue's the leader there, but some work still to be done.
Well, I don't think Omer Mayer affects Luke Ertl at all. I think Luke Ertl is more of a utility kind of combo guard. He can play point guard, but I always compare him favorably to Eric Hunter. He's that sort of guard. I mean, a guard who can play point guard for you, but can play with a point guard, can do a lot of different things for you. He's a big-time substance guy, and that's, I think, what set him apart from in Purdue's view. I think Purdue is always going to take another point guard in that class.
Yeah.
And now they don't have to because Omer Mayer is a multi-year player in the program, poised to take over for Braden Smith when he's done. Luke Ertl can fit in really well in a bunch of different roles for Purdue, much the same way C.J. Cox and Jakari Harris did this past season and will continue to this season and beyond. So I don't think there's really any sort of effect there either way. Trey Thompson is the guy Purdue needs.
Yeah.
Purdue has to figure out who its four-man is after Trey Kaufman ran. That would have been Camden Heidi's opportunity had he not left. But that would have just been a one-year deal for his senior year. Purdue wants to get more skilled at that position. I think they have played big over the years, but they recognize that, well, with Trey Kaufman-Renn, they've played big at least. With Mason Gillis, to a certain extent, they played big. With Caleb First, they certainly played big. Purdue wants to get back to having, 4-out sort of elements in its offense. And by 4-out, I don't just mean a guy who can make threes. I mean a guy who can dribble, pass, and shoot, and things like that. And Trey Thompson is that guy. He's not the biggest power forward on planet Earth, but he's a pretty good athlete. I think he's going to have to get a little bit bigger and stronger, but he can really shoot. He can dribble. He can pass. He can do a lot of different things. He's got a great energy about him. And he's kind of the guy Purdue earmarked from day one. This is the four-man we want in this class. And, Purdue damn near had him committed back in the winter. He ultimately decided to hold off. I don't think that's an indictment of Purdue by any stretch of the imagination, but I think he's very, very close to doing something. And, people will want to stay tuned to that one. That'd be a huge get for Purdue. I think the overall picture of Purdue recruiting, and I don't just mean 2026, I mean the entire landscape. I think Trey Thompson's kind of your number one storyline here because he's the right recruit at the right time, at the right position, and a fit that you're trying to work your program back toward. So a really big deal if Purdue's able to get him. And it seems like, Matt Painter and Paul Lusk went to see him the other night. And he didn't commit then and there. I think there was some sentiment to just play out a live period, but I think it might just be a formality here.
Yeah. The transfer portal did close for men's basketball. It's closing on Friday night for football, and we hit with Tom Dienhart already on that. But the significance of that, I mean, obviously you've been reporting all along, and Purdue's roster has been set to now that obviously that you've got Liam Murphy and Mayer and Oscar Clough as part of the new part of the 25-26 roster. It was a non-event from that standpoint, but anything else to add to that fray in terms of where the roster is, which we talked last week about being the odds-on number one team at least by some of these wonderful betting services that we deal with. But is there anything else of newsworthy or thought we haven't really discussed here on the closing of the portal and what's next?
I think Purdue just smoked the cycle. I mean, it just, Purdue has this way of just doing what it's doing, and things have a funny way of working out here.
Yeah.
I mean, this is probably been the most chaotic few weeks in recent memory for college basketball. And that says a lot.
Yeah.
Given the Jerry Springer show that college basketball has been for a decade plus. All this chaos is going on. Purdue, for the first time, has to delve into the chaos, 2 feet in, and Purdue gets it all handled quick and clean. They get the guys they want, drama-free. Again, quick and clean is the way I can best describe it. That's how Purdue has operated in recruiting. Lance Jones, open and shut case. Oscar Clough, open and shut case. Liam Murphy, open and shut case. Omer Meyer sure seemed like an open and shut case. Prior to that, for years, Purdue has been getting its guys committed in high school and getting them, for the most part, early and holding on to them, with the exception of some guys Purdue benefited from not ending up with anyway.
Right.
It's just, Purdue just kind of has this insulation about them from chaos. I mean, when you look at the guys Purdue had committed who they didn't get, those guys would have been disasters on this team this past year. Cannon Catchings would not have worked at Purdue. I think that became pretty evident as the recruiting process went on. Draven Gibbs Longhorn a few years before that would have been a disaster at Purdue. And I think Purdue kind of knew that all along. So when he decided to go a different direction, or however that all went down, I think they were not bothered in the least. And that's what I've been getting at in all these conversations we've had, is that this whole recruiting landscape now has helped Purdue vet its best fits pretty well. And I think Purdue has just kind of had this insulation about it from chaos, which has really benefited it. When you look at the stability of this program has had, when you look at how things that seem negative in the moment turn out broadly to be a positive in the long run, it's just Purdue seems like it can do no wrong in this regard. I mean, obviously things aren't going to work out 100% of the time in every way, shape, and form, but Purdue has been pretty chaos proof here the last couple of years, one way or another, and that certainly was illustrated in this particular transaction cycle. I don't want to call it a portal cycle because Omer Mayer is not a transfer.
Right. Understood.
He's essentially a freshman, even though he's a professional. He's 4 years younger than the professionals Illinois is signing, but he's still a professional. So it couldn't have gone any better for Purdue. This was a home run cycle. You don't have the most athletic team in college basketball, but you hit all your needs for next year's team right on the head. You completed your team. You made yourself a potentially great team with the additions that you made. But also, part of this portal stuff too, the winners and losers, is who you kept and who you lost. And, Purdue, wasn't thrilled, I'm sure, to see Camden Heide and Miles Colvin leave. Those guys are good players, but they replaced them with greater needs. And they completed their team, and they made themselves better by a mile when you take into account the plus minus, when you weigh the additions versus the subtractions. Purdue is way better now than they were a month ago on paper for this coming season. And it happened pretty easily, as easy as things can happen in this weird landscape nowadays.
Yeah. Alan Karpick here with Brian Neubert, and we're hitting a variety of topics with Purdue men's basketball. All right, the House settlement, another issue that's kind of a not right now has not been determined. That the April 7th or April 8th date has come and gone. You had an interesting comment that we talked about last week that schools now when and how it's settled will matter certainly, but teams have had to, and whether it be college football or men's college basketball, or really all athletic departments have had to move forward. I mean, is that the way you've seen it work out, and what do you see out of this?
Well, yeah. All the power schools got clearance way back when to start moving ahead provisionally based on the settlement eventually being approved by Claudia Wilkin, the federal judge who's in charge of this. She came back this week and she asked for revisions regarding the portions of the settlement that involve roster limits because of all the athletes who would be cut or athletes who are committed or enrolled or signed who would all of a sudden lose their spots, which I'm sure I'm not the most informed person on this, but I never understood why that was such a hard deal for the NCAA or the proposers of the settlement to figure out, because what the NCAA is supposed to be is a provider of opportunities, not this entity that snatches them out of people's hands. There's nothing that says every athlete on your roster has to be on scholarship. There's nothing that says that every athlete in your athletic department has to participate in revenue sharing. The Title IX implications are dicey for some schools, but I don't understand why they couldn't have written into that initial proposal everyone on a roster now, everybody signed right now, everybody committed right now even is written into this on the front end, and they will be exempt for the duration of their careers. There's got to be some reason. It almost always has to do with money, but I don't see the money. And when it's not money, it's the fact coaches and athletic departments don't trust each other to follow the rules. But I don't see where a competitive advantage lies if every team can only dress the same number of athletes. Who cares if Ohio State has 45 people on their softball team? Who cares if you can only dress a certain number of them during competitions like basketball? What difference does it make if Purdue has 5 walk-ons on its roster but can only dress 2 of them for games and all the others can just practice? Who cares?
Yeah.
There is no competitive advantage there. Now, I'm sure somebody, probably in the SEC, devised a way that Alabama could game the system or whatever, but it just doesn't make any sense to me. The athletes on your roster don't have to be paid. There's, other than uniforms and in some cases just practice gear, maybe feeding them. I don't know what if walk-on status changes now in terms of what an athletic department can provide for a walk-on. I don't know. It's probably in there in the settlement somewhere, but it just never made any sense to me why there was going to be this bloodletting all of a sudden at this defined point in time that, Purdue's basketball teams were going to have to cut loose walk-ons and decide who to keep, and all of these swimmers, softball players, track runners, cross-country runners, whatever, in sports that have historically relied on walk-ons, why they were just all of a sudden going to have to cut all these people loose. It just didn't make any sense to me, and it still doesn't. And that's kind of the hang up here. If they had just written this more compassionately and with more self-awareness about how this looked and how this was going to actually impact people, this would have been approved on Monday, I'm quite certain. But they're going to go back, they're going to rewrite it, they're going to repropose it, and it's going to pass in time. I'm quite certain. And if not, the Big Ten and the SEC have already started doing this, and they've got clearance for revenue share. They'll go ahead without everybody else. I'm quite certain, and I don't think any of the groundwork that like Purdue and those like it have laid toward this is going to be wasted. I think this is going to happen at Purdue and everywhere like it. So I don't think there's really any huge concern over this thing not passing. I think it's just a matter of they're going to have to make it more logical and more compassionate, more self-aware, and it should be an easy fix. But as we have learned over many, many years, nothing with the NCAA is easy.
Yeah.
Nothing is an easy fix, and somehow they managed to botch this. This was a layup. They've had all this time since the provisional approval of the settlement to tweak this thing to where you can get it through, and they somehow messed it up. Whatever.
Yeah, you have to. I can't see a competitive advantage by hoarding walk-ons because it's free. The walk-ons have their choice to, where they go to school. They're not getting paid. They're not. I mean, there's no. It used to be back in the day that when they didn't limit numbers of scholarships, that was a little deal. When the Ohio States of the world would scholarship 125 football players, but that's long been passed, long since been passed. But I mean, there's nothing else to be gained.
You can only scholarship up to 115 football players, as I understand it.
105, right?
I thought it was 115. Yeah. It might be 105. 115 was the roster limit before, but I don't know. You can only scholarship X number of football players, and I can't imagine all that many schools going all the way to the max on that. The power schools get $20.5 million to share with their entire athletic department,
however they choose.
And that's basketball, that's football, that's whatever Olympic sports you really, really value at your place, you really invest in. At Purdue, that'll be volleyball, that'll be women's basketball, although I wouldn't necessarily call those Olympic sports.
No.
But I think that it's not even possible to hoard players the way that people fear you'll hoard players. There's only so much money to go around, and if anybody's going to take some of their football money out of that $20.5 million, which I can just pull a number out of the sky and say $17 million for your football roster. If you're going to take part of that money to pay your 80th through 100th best players, and thus dilute the amount of money Jeremiah Smith is getting at Ohio State. Now, obviously, people are going to supplement this with NIL, and there are going to be workarounds to this. But, theoretically, that's just stupid. Like, I've always said that, like, I don't cover women's basketball, so I kind of sit here kind of conflicted about whether or not I should offer opinions. But what I would do, or I would look at doing, is just, all right, look, all of our money, all of it is going to the three best players on the team. Because in women's basketball, you can get good with three players. And everybody else, hey, you know what? For 50 years, a scholarship and an opportunity to play at Purdue was a pretty damn good deal.
Yeah.
So 12 of you 15, if that's not good enough, and I'm talking about a team that won 3-15 in the Big Ten here last year too. So, I would, seriously look at just investing in the best players as just a way of getting up and running in the short term.
Yeah.
Now, if anybody from 4 through 15 establishes himself as a really good, really important player, you can revisit this, or NIL can, kind of kick in. But it's just, it would seem like there's, you don't have to pay everybody. You can't pay everybody. In football, I don't see how you can even hoard players. When it was unlimited scholarships, you could do that. because you could it didn't matter. Whatever your university or your boosters were willing to pay, you could have that. And at Alabama, Bear Bryant, that was always the great fear. Woody Hayes
Hayes definitely did it. Yeah.
Bo Schembechler would take all the best players in the Midwest, and a kid who would have, how different is it from what it's been? But Ohio State and Michigan would take all the good players, and Notre Dame, and all of a sudden, Minnesota and Indiana and Purdue and them, had to go find players some other way, because all the best players in the Midwest were getting stacked on top of each other on Ohio State and Michigan's practice squad. You can't do that nowadays, because these kids want to play. Playing is the way to earn money. Performing is the way to earn money. And, it's just not realistic that that's going to happen anymore. So why they had to put these restrictions on there, I really don't understand. But it's the universities, remember, who make up the NCAA. So whatever was in that settlement was what the schools themselves wanted. So if people wanted rosters capped for every sport, that's because the schools wanted it that way. I just don't understand why it's such a big deal for the schools.
Yeah, there'll be more of that, and Brian will be talking to Mike Babinski when this gets settled. And Mike is probably eager to get this past him as well in the role of Purdue's athletic director.
Yeah, he is. I'm quite certain he is squirming in his chair about this. Because
I do know that for Mike Carmen spent
this is a big deal for Purdue. They really need this to go through. It's going to go through.
Yeah, it's just a question.
They just have to change the language. They just have to ease some of the concerns that really didn't need to be raised in this, had they just written this better on the front end.
Yeah. All right. Brian, thanks as always. Want to thank the Union Club Hotel and the Boiler House Prime Restaurant. Now about its third week of being open, and starting to talk to some people have had the opportunity to go there. It is a prime spot on the part of the Pete Dye Clubhouse. Beautiful view facing the south end of the old South Golf Course, the Ackerman Allen course, and of course. And Sam Allen and family put the money up for that. It is a beautiful facility, and certainly take advantage of that when you get the chance. Also, a reminder too that you can subscribe to not only GoldandBlack.com but also our YouTube page. We appreciate that if you do that as well. So have a great rest of the weekend, and we'll be back next week with some other scintillating topic. Probably a little bit more of the same, but some other things I'm sure will be coming up. Obviously, we'll have the finality of not the finality of the football
finalization.
That's right, finalization, but actually just the finalization of the football portal being closed. Certainly not the finalization of Purdue's football roster.
Leave me out of that.
I know.
I want no part of that stuff.
Brother Dienhart gets to do that, and he's been doing it well, and we'll be talking with him about that. God bless him. All right, have a great rest of the weekend. Thanks, everybody, for taking the time to watch and or listen, or if you watch it once and then listen another time, more power to you. We appreciate you very much.